Hello, everyone. Welcome to the SavvyCast. This is Jamie, and I'm thrilled that you're joining today, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. I'm very excited to have a friend who's been on the podcast before and co-host of a very popular podcast, the Big Boo Podcast. My friend Melanie Shankle is joining me today to talk about all the things she's been doing lately and specifically talk about her new book, Here Be Dragons, Treading the Deep Waters of Motherhood, Mean Girls, and Generational Trauma. Could not be more delighted to have to the SavvyCast today my friend Melanie Shankle. Melanie, thank you so much for joining on the SavvyCast today.
Jamie, I'm so happy to be here. I can't wait to talk to you.
Well, you and I were just talking about the last time you were on the podcast, and you were talking about your book, which is one of my favorite books of all time, The Bright Side, On the Bright Side.
Yes. Thank you.
First of all, congratulations on being a New York Times bestselling, a 3-time New York bestselling author.
Thank you. I know it kind of blows my mind. What on earth?
Melanie, and I heard, I don't know if it was on Big Boo Cast or where, that you were trying to tell Perry. Can you recount that story? That was the funniest thing. I was thinking, that is so Zane and me.
I know.
Ever, which I would never be a New York Times bestselling author. But that was so funny. And I know those who listen to you probably have heard this. I'm sure you.
Yeah.
But when you were telling your husband,
Uh-huh.
trying to tell him that you made it on the New York Times bestseller list for Here Be Dragons.
Yeah. So I called him. So I was in Dallas because I was in the middle of my book tour, and I was in Dallas when my publisher called to let me know. And so, of course, I get off the phone with them, and he's my first call. And Perry is, listen, he's an outdoorsman. He's a hunter, not a big reader. We just, we have very different interests. And so I called him and I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, they just called. I said, the book hit number 5 on like the hardcover nonfiction list on New York Times. And he was like, oh my gosh, that's great. And he goes, now tell me, like, what does that mean? And I was like, no, it's like a big deal. I said, it's like a unicorn. And he was like, but like, tell me. And I was like, do you know your grandpa's super rare shotgun that you have in the safe? And he was like, yes. And I said, it's like that. And he was like, oh man, that's like a really.
I love that. I love that. And I do have to tell you that I cannot even wrap my brain around, because this is your 3rd time to be on the in NYC. Can you tell me, when you are launching into that season of life, how much do you have to give the outside of your normal? You're busy already. I mean, you are so busy. What does it take to make that happen?
It's, that's such a good question because I don't know. Like, people are like, how do you, and it's so unpredictable. I think that list in particular, because there's lots of bestseller lists that are just purely like USA Today is purely if you sold the most amount of books in a week, the top 100. And so it includes like The Very Hungry Caterpillar. I mean, it's like kids' books, it's everything. But New York Times, everybody has said it's a formula that nobody really knows because it's not just sales, but it's also there's a committee and they decide. And so for a faith-based book to hit that list is not a usual thing. Like that can be really hard to do, especially in nonfiction, because a lot of times they'll put you under like advice, miscellaneous, how to, if it's faith-based. So, but I think you have to, number one, you have to have a great audience, which I'm so thankful to have. I mean, like, I think the way my audience, like our podcast listeners and the people that have read my books, like they're so supportive. And I think even traveling around on the book tour, everybody's like, I just feel like you're my friend. And I'm like, but we are friends. Like we may have not met yet, but the fact that you listen to what I do and you read my books, and that tells me that we would be friends if we lived in the same city and could go get coffee. And so I think it takes a lot of audience buy-in. And Sophie and I say this about the podcast all the time. We have the very best listeners in the whole world. I mean, our women are just the kindest, most supportive, sweetest cheerleaders. And we even see it like, because we've started doing the live shows, over the last couple of years. And even in the audience, like what's so fun is to watch, there'll be like a woman who came by herself. And by the end of the weekend, like she's going to dinner with this whole group of women that she just met, because then they just take her in. And so I think it takes that. And then I think you've got to, which this is the hardest part of book writing for me, is you've got to promote it. I mean, you have to get out there and get the word out that here's my book and here's what it's about. And I believe in the message and I want people to read it because I think it can help them in some way. And that marketing piece has always been really hard for me because I think we grow up in this whole thing of, the Southern culture is like, don't brag about yourself or don't, it feels,
Don't ask for anything.
yes,
Yeah.
that's it. So I think you have to be, proud of what you've done.
Well, when you are writing this, does it totally disrupt your schedule when you're writing a book? Do you
It
have to go off and do you just batch content or what does that look
I
like?
know. I am probably not the best example because I can be so I'm just not an organized person. I am the exact opposite of you, Jamie. Like the way you like plan stuff and you have stuff and like I'm terrible at that. Um so for me writing is like if I'm in the process of writing a book, I try to tell myself I'm going to write every day, even if it's terrible, but it's a discipline. And sometimes I can do it at home, and sometimes I have to leave and go to a coffee shop or go somewhere. I know for me, my window is about 3 hours. Like I'm going to be productive for about 3 hours and then I'm done. My brain is so tired. But
Mhm.
I think the biggest thing for me when I'm writing a book, as I say, I become so socially awkward because I live in my head constantly and I'm so tired. Like I'm so mentally tired. So by the time, it comes time to go have dinner with friends or to sit down with Perry and have dinner, I'm like, I'm exhausted. Like
Yeah.
I don't have anything left to give. And this book, especially because it was so raw, and so personal, like it took a lot out of me. Like it really, when I look back, I'm like, that was a hard, hard year writing that book.
And I will say when I got the book and I got my goodness, how long ago did I get I got it pretty quickly. So that would have been how many months?
February. Yeah.
Yeah.
February. Yeah.
And I will say I read it in 2 nights.
Oh, wow.
And, I will say it's 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 very heavy,
Mhm.
and I will say and Melanie, this is one thing I just wanna, I guess, dive right in.
Yeah.
The first thing I thought of was, "Oh, no, I'm gonna read this book and realize what a horrible mother
Oh,
I was," because when you said generational trauma, I know I feel like we all have it to some degree.
yeah, for sure.
But I was thinking, "Oh my goodness." So, tell me, first of all, tell everyone who may not have an idea of what generational trauma is or how you define it. What
Mhm.
how do you define generational trauma?
I mean, I think generational trauma to me is anything that you can look in your family line and go, this is a dysfunctional pattern that has been passed down. And that can look like a lot of different things. And I was even telling a friend this the other day because she was like, I feel bad because I feel like my story wasn't as severe as yours, or, my mom was never mean to me. But I was like, but even if there was a way as a child where you feel like you took on responsibilities or you took on the burden of like your parents' emotional well being, like all of that can create patterns in us that we take into our marriages and our friendships and our relationships. So it's kind of anything that wasn't normal necessarily or that created, and I think that can range from like abuse and alcoholism and you know and all of those things to just I mean, this friend of mine was like, my parents got divorced when I was in high school, and all of a sudden I took on the burden of all of my mom's feelings and trying to make sure she was okay and then trying to manage my dad, and you think that is a trauma of sorts. And so it ranges, but I think the truth is here's what you and I know because we've raised pretty much grown children at this point is
Mhm.
we're as parents, there are going to be ways that no matter how perfectly we try to do it, we're going to fail. I mean, we're just not going to get it all right. And that's where I feel like you trust that Jesus is going to fill in the gaps that we didn't. Just because we're all just human doing the best that we can.
Mhm. Well, can was there a okay, Here Be Dragons. I do want you to just briefly tell everyone where you got that title. It is an amazing title, and once you've read the book, it's even more amazing. You did a great job choosing that.
Thank you.
Let's segue into, for those who have not read it, an overview of what you share in Here Be Dragons.
Okay. So I chose the title. So probably, gosh, almost 10 years ago, maybe, I read an article. It was just something on the internet and it was about Here Be Dragons. And so the origin was that back in medieval times when people would set sail across the ocean in search of new lands and, treasure or whatever, that they would make maps. They had these ancient maps that they would draw on. And when they knew that there was like a place in the ocean that had either been unexplored or maybe a ship had sunk there or maybe sailors had seen something scary there, they would mark it in Latin, "Here be dragons." And it was just their way of saying, like, hey, there's danger here. Like, be aware, there's something up ahead and we don't know exactly what it is. And so when I read that, it really stuck with me because I was like, isn't that like life? That we're just going along and dragons pop up, like, I mean, I feel like the map of our whole life could be here be dragons because you
Mhm.
never know when there's going to be a huge shift that you weren't prepared for. And so that was the title, and then as Caroline started to deal with my daughter, I have an only child, Caroline, who's 21 now, but as she was starting to deal with a lot of mean girl dynamics at high school, and we were dealing with that, and then I was still processing and that I had, made my decision to walk away from my mom, I just thought, "Oh, this is this book, like, this all ties together," and so kind of the whole thing of Here Be Dragons is about breaking the cycles of generational dysfunction and what I had to heal from in my relationship with my mom to get healthy, to be able to raise my daughter to be exactly who God created her to be and in a spiritually healthy and emotionally healthy home. And then also being healthy enough to help her navigate what she went through in high school, dealing with all the mean girl drama dynamics to get to the other side. And so, in the course of writing that book, it was actually Sophie, my podcast partner, who said, she was like, "Do you see the common thread from where your mom was this in your life? And then you had to watch your daughter face this same kind of thing in a different form." And that's when I was like, oh, my mom was my first mean girl. Like, she was the first person who
I was
told
gonna
me,
ask you. That's
yeah.
what I was gonna ask
Hmm.
you. Was she in reading the book,
Hmm.
so hard because you share that in a very, oh my goodness, you share it in a way that's heartfelt. It's not condemning, but it hits.
Yeah. Because I think it was such a like, I don't think that I even could put words to it until I wrote it. And then I was like, oh, that's what she was. Because I was like, that's what a mean girl is it's somebody who tells you all the ways that you aren't good enough and preys on your insecurities and makes you feel like you're never going to measure up. And you constantly feel like there's this competitive jealousy thing. And that's what my mom and I had. And I will say, like, in the time since the book has come out, I'm like, that's so many women's experience with their mother, um, which is just so fascinating to me because I don't know what that is. I mean, it's just a lot of brokenness, I think.
I know you mentioned your grandmother, her
Hmm.
mother,
Yeah.
and their, very like-minded emphasis on beauty and looks,
Hmm.
and I know you well enough and listen to you enough that, and so do I, we love beauty, skin products,
Yeah.
we love to chat about those things,
Hmm.
but the description of them was that it went way deeper than that, it wasn't really about that,
Yeah.
and I don't really know how to articulate that, but I was like, that wasn't really it's about more than just beauty, just that constant.
That's
Maybe
it.
it's about here's where you need to be, but it was unattainable. Is
Yeah.
that the way you felt your whole childhood? That this is a bar that is
Yeah.
accepted, but it's unattainable?
Yeah, because I think that the beauty was a bigger thing of because you listen, Jamie, you and I know we love our beauty
Oh my
treatments.
goodness,
I
yeah.
I love my esthetician.
Never met one I didn't like.
That's it. Yeah, I'm gonna do it
Yeah,
all. I mean, I
yeah,
have drawers full of
right.
every skincare promise that there is out there. I've
Yeah,
got the red lights, I've got all the stuff.
yes.
But for them, I think it took on such a different because it really was about this focus on everything on the external, not the internal. And it went beyond just the beauty. It was to the point where it's like it didn't matter if you were a terrible person as long as you looked good, and as long as your life looked good and as long as everything looked a certain way. And it was so interesting because my grandmother, and I don't say this in the book, but she started selling real estate later in life. She became a real estate agent and she started buying herself all this jewelry. Like all of a sudden she had a Cadillac and then she had all these diamonds and diamond earrings and diamond, all of this stuff. And when she passed away, what we found out is that all of it was fake. So it was like it didn't even matter. And I thought, man, that feels like such a testament of, and listen, there's nothing wrong with fake jewelry, but it just was such a testament of the way she lived where I was like, it was all about what it looked like, not about what it really was. And
Mm.
I feel like that was the theme for she and my mom, where there was just constant, you could not walk in without being critiqued about your weight or how your hair looked or, why I remember there was one time when Perry and I were newlyweds and we had driven 8 hours to get to my family's lake house. After work, it was like midnight, 1 in the morning when we finally got there. And the first thing my grandmother said to me is like, well, I really wish that you were still wearing lipstick. And I thought, I've been in the car for 8 hours. Like, I'm exhausted.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Well, I want to ask you because your mother just, there were so many facets to her personality, the way she treated you. If you had to boil it down, I know she was bipolar, correct?
Yeah, she
Would you
was.
would you say that that was the biggest, I guess, fault that she had that made was it the mental illness that pretty much made her the dragon?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I mean, I think at the end of the day, because I think when I look back at my mom, what's so hard is I'm like, I couldn't, it's so easy if you can paint somebody as all bad, that's
Mhm,
really easy. But there was really good. Like, there was a lot of, like, I have great memories of my mom. Like, we would have fun together, we would laugh. I mean, there are still things that I do or say where I'm like, oh, that is my mom, so it's that. But I think that the mental illness was the thing that controlled her life. I just don't think I think it's the reason that she self-medicated the way she did with prescription drugs. I just think that she felt things, and this was, I always say this was like the '80s, so nobody was diagnosing this stuff like they are now.
mm,
And I think even beyond, I think she had borderline personality disorder because it was so when I look back at how divisive she could be and how chaotic she could be, and how toxic she could be. And my sister and I have talked about this a lot. When we look back at our that whole family line, there is such a history of mental illness and mental disorders and suicide and alcoholism. And we've kind of said, like, what on earth was going on there for this much of this to be prevalent in our family history?
and the juxtaposition, Melanie, with your dad.
Mhm. Yeah.
You had a Is your dad still living?
He is, yeah, yeah, he's still
What
living,
a
he'll yeah,
what a great dad.
yeah, yeah,
But the dynamic there, and I've thought before because he was there, he
mhm,
never stopped,
mhm,
he pursuing you, but yet he let her take the lead, and
yeah,
you did defer to her because even though, and correct me if I'm articulating this wrong, even though you knew how she was treating you, you would let her convince you that he was
yeah,
had bad motives or whatever.
yeah,
Did you That's because I'm that's so puzzling.
mhm.
That
Well, and I think because, Jamie, for me, I don't think that I had the awareness of what my mom was. It wasn't until I really got to college where you start to go, "Oh, I don't think the way I was raised is normal." Like, I don't think the way my mom treated me when I started to look around at the way other friends were with their moms, I was like, "Oh, this is different." Like, my mom never treated me this way. My mom never valued me this way. And so I think I just believed, and she's the parent that I lived with. There again, I'm like, this was the '70s and the '80s. And so, my dad's even said after he read the book, he was like, man, there was a lot of this I didn't know. And I'm like, well, number one, I didn't even know how to articulate that as a kid
Mhm,
because my loyalty was to my mom because she was my mom.
mhm.
And so I didn't even know that it wasn't okay, and I never wanted to upset her, so I was always trying to keep the peace with her, so I just kinda went along with whatever she said, and I think my dad and I are very similar, like, he's very non-confrontational, he doesn't like conflict, he's the nicest guy in the world, and and he's infinitely charming, but I think because of that, he never really wanted to engage with my mom beyond what he had to.
Mhm.
And so he wasn't gonna create this whole he said,
Wow.
she said battle because
Mm,
I think at the end of the day, what he realized is that was gonna hurt me more than it was gonna help me. And so, I mean, I say in the book, he took the high road and he waited for time to play that out. And I think that's so hard to do because how quick as humans in any situation do we want to immediately defend ourselves? and be like,
Mhm.
"No, this isn't right. This isn't you've got the wrong idea." But he let it play out, which is a testament to his character and his integrity.
Right. Well, I don't, because I recommend this book so highly to anyone. It's entertaining. You hit every angle. You're funny. You're authentic. You can hit hard topics with humor, but then switch back. I mean, you're so talented. But
Thank you.
just on your journey, but when did you realize, without a doubt, because I'm sure you had had thoughts before,
Mhm.
need to break it off. She's not gonna change, but when was the time that you said, "You know what, Lord, I cannot. She won't let me."
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for me, I finally got to that. There had been points where I had really come close and I just couldn't because I think, as Christians especially, I think you wrestle so much with when do you walk away from a relationship? Like what does forgiveness look like? And
Mhm,
can you and I knew in my head because there had been different times where I was like I'm going to cut her out. I'm going to be done. But at the time I was angry and I was kind of bitter, and I thought, "I can't do it while I'm angry and bitter. I can't do it out of spite because at that point, I'm perpetuating a cycle that I'm trying to break." But I was like, when I can get to a point where I feel like I can forgive her and be like, "This is what it is, but I just can't be a part of it," that's when I knew I was gonna be free to walk away. And that happened Caroline was in 1st grade. So at that point, I would have been about 38, 39 years old, and she called and left me a message, and she just blasted me and told me and she said and I had been praying about this for so long, Jamie, like, I had really been praying, like, "God, give me wisdom, give me discernment. I don't wanna do this if it's not the right thing." But she said the words to me, "If this is the end of our relationship, then so be it." And it was almost like her saying that, and at that point, because I had been a mom for 6 years, I thought, "In no world would I ever say that to my daughter, not in a million years." And so it almost set me free to be like, "You know what? This is I'm gonna walk away. I'm gonna walk away." And so that's what I did. And I'm so thankful in hindsight that God gave me the clarity that he did because
mhm.
you don't here's the thing, you never cut off that relationship and think, "Man, this feels great. It feels awesome that I don't talk to my mom." Like, you want it to feel like a relief, but it doesn't really, there's still a pain there. So I was glad to have the clarity because I would need to go back and revisit the reasons why I made that decision, along the way.
I know she was young, she was 6 when that
Mhm.
how does Caroline, I know you've talked with her, and she was encouraging you to write this book, actually,
Yeah.
didn't she?
Yeah. Mhm.
And y'all's conversations about this, and so she knew your grandmother until, like, when did was their last interaction?
I
How
mean, probably about I mean, it was probably about that same time. I mean, she was probably in 1st grade, but, the thing
right.
was is my mom really had not come around, so they had never developed, like, a really close relationship or, she was so close with my stepmom, who's my dad's wife,
Mm,
was really her grandmother, and Perry's mom lives here in town, and so so my mom was it was she almost it kind of felt like she didn't really have a relationship because it had gotten to even when my mom came, number 1, I kept Caroline kind of at a distance from her because I was afraid of what she would say to her.
mhm.
And a lot of times my mom at that point, like her drug use was so bad that even if she came, it's like she would just go get in bed and stay in bed the whole time. So there hadn't been a whole lot of interaction.
Well, just some of the things that you went through when she was in her, 2nd marriage,
Mhm.
just the sign on the door. I can't get
Oh,
that was probably, I was sharing that with Zane. I said, well, just like you said, "In what world
yeah.
would
It's
anyone ever, would you even do that with you and Perry, put a sign?"
no.
I mean, without, no,
No, nobody
and
wants to think about their parents in that way. You just
no,
don't
and it was you were struggling, it was not even your
yeah,
dad, and just things like that. I was like, "Oh my goodness, there
yeah,
had to be such a mental illness, just distance from reality," because that was just that hit me
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot. But, when you were raising Carolyn, now she is not home, right? I know has she graduated?
She graduates in 2 weeks, so she
Oh, in
graduates
2 weeks. Where's
yeah.
she going?
So she's gonna go stay and get her master's. So she's gonna come home for the summer. She's doing a trip to Europe with some girlfriends, then she's gonna be home for the summer, and then she's gonna go back and get her master's. So,
Oh my
um,
goodness, I know.
I know. Listen.
What was the because, I mean, Melanie, you're just such a pleasant, beautiful, inside and out person. I know that you did not struggle with horrible parenting things, but what's the one thing that you maybe did or you struggled with
Mhm.
throughout the majority of raising Caroline that you know where you got it and it was just the hardest thing to shake?
Yeah. I think for me, it's funny because I think a lot of it was almost knee-jerk reaction to the way I was raised is I was like, "I am gonna be the perfect mom. I'm gonna be the mom that I didn't have, and I'm gonna do everything right, and Caroline's never gonna feel an ounce of discomfort or pain or
Mm.
anything." And here's the thing, that's so unrealistic. It's just it's never
Impossible.
it's
Yeah.
it's impossible. I mean, I'm gonna be because as a mom, you're gonna be tired, you're gonna be worn down, you're dealing with your own emotions and your own stuff, and so, number 1, that was an impossible burden to put on myself, and I failed in different ways along the way, but I think even watching her navigate into, like, when she went through her stuff in high school and in college is how much um Caroline and I are very different. Caroline is very much like her dad, so she is a
Mhm.
bold truth teller, she will speak her mind, she isn't afraid to, like, say no to something, she sets boundaries, like, she will call out something if she sees it. She's just not afraid of that. That makes me so uncomfortable, like, so many
Mhm.
times I would be like, "Can't you just" and she was like, "No, that's not who I am. I'm not gonna." And so it's like learning to for me to learn to let go of what I thought she needed to do or how she needed to handle stuff and let her handle it the way that was true to her and the way God created her, I think has been my biggest struggle because sometimes I'm like, "That's not how I would do that," but I also know that it's exactly and I can look and see the ways where I'm like, "No, she did exactly what she was supposed to do. It wasn't mine to try to manage or to take on," you know?
Yeah, and boy, parenting adult children, it's difficult even in the fun decisions, like how you might choose to birth your children.
Yes. Yes.
Your or how you might the sleep patterns. I mean, things
Mhm.
can be but you or I'm having to learn to zip it.
Yes.
That and that is
Yes.
that's a big thing, but I do appreciate that. Well, just for those listening or watching, what will be a parenting takeaway that can help them that you emphasize in this book? I found many things, but what do you when you're writing this, what are
Yeah.
you trying to convey to people who either experienced it or maybe inflicting some sort of
Mhm.
trauma on their children? How do you weave your story together to help whichever that side
Yeah.
that is?
I mean, I think no matter where you fall on this spectrum, whether you came from a situation that you're like, this was so broken, or as a parent, you're trying to navigate in raising your kids, I think here's what you start with is I think Jesus is the key to all of it. I mean, I think when you are spiritually healthy and you ask him for the boldness and the bravery to break any cycles that you don't want to pass down, whatever that may be, whether that's control or abuse or whatever, to surrender to him and to trust that he can break those cycles. And it takes one brave person. And I think the thing is when you're the one that starts to break those cycles, you're going to have people in your family that are going to tell you, you're crazy. Why are you doing this? Why are you being so mean? This is the way we've always done it. But
Mhm.
you have to trust what God is doing in your heart and in your family. So I think there's that. And then what that allows you to do is to raise the child that God gave you, maybe not even the child that you wish you had, if that makes sense, like to embrace them. Because I think the best thing we can do is teach our kids to walk their road. They were created with their own gifts, their own abilities. And let's focus on those things. And I feel like our society has so bought into like, here's what's a successful kid. You've got to be on the honor roll. You've got to be captain of this team. You've got to go to this college. You've got to get in this sorority. But I'm like, but are we focused on like, be kind to the person that doesn't have any friends? Look for ways to make the world better than you found it. Like, what are the things outside of yourself? Because I think those are the things that make you feel most fulfilled as a person. Like, where can you be the hands and feet of Jesus? And can we raise our kids to be that? Even if sometimes that doesn't look like success as the world tells us success needs to look.
What would you say? to someone listening who reads your book and they see themselves, someone who was abused their whole
Mhm.
childhood, and they're about to have a child, or they're about to be, or they are a parent.
Mhm.
What is, and I think your faith, you're going to say that first, but in
Yeah.
addition to clinging to Jesus and
Mhm.
leaning into your faith, what's the number one thing that kept you on the right path, being a great parent? I'm sure you had to shut out voices. You're going
Yeah.
to be this, you're going to be that. What got you through other than your faith?
Honestly, I think it's being intentional. I think intentional parenting is the biggest thing of, like, to really think about, number 1, what are the cycles I'm trying to break? How can I intentionally do this better? And what does that look like? And that may be, like, I write a lot of stuff down, obviously, because I'm a writer, but, like,
Mm.
here are, you know, put it in your mind. Like, here are 5 ways that I know I want to be different for my child, or here are 5 things that I wish I would have had in childhood. And I think the beauty for Ashes, the redemption of all of it, if you come from a really hard past, is what a gift it is to get to be the thing in somebody else's life that you wish that you had had in yours. Like, it's such a full circle thing. And I think that can be in parenthood. I think it can be in friendship. I think it can be in your marriage. But, like, to get to be that thing for a person that you wish that somebody had been in your life. And I think that gives you a clear view of, what do I wish I had that I didn't have?
Wow, that's profound. That's beautiful.
So,
Well, Melanie, your book is amazing. You're amazing,
thank you.
and
You're amazing.
I hope to see you again. We got
I
to meet in
know.
person. Are you? I missed you in Birmingham. I realized after you were here. Are you
I know.
back?
Well, okay, so it's funny that you say that. I'm actually coming back this weekend, but it's a quick, we're going to Auburn for a birthday party. So, and Caroline's coming in, and so it's going to be a quick trip. But I do think Sophie and I are planning on doing another live show in Birmingham, like spring of 26. So, so I'll be back at some point.
Are
So
you
I
still doing a book tour? Your book tour?
No, I'm pretty much
You're
finished.
you're
So,
done. Okay.
yes, I'm done. So at this point, I'm just gearing up for graduation. That's what we've got next on the docket. So, yeah,
That's amazing. Well, I'm going to link to your book. I cannot recommend it enough, and it is Audible as well.
it is. Yeah, and I read it. So, you get it in my Texas accent.
Oh, I love it. Well, Melanie, thank you, my friend. It was just a pleasure, and I do hope to see you at some point.
I know. I'll see you soon. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, my
All right.
friend. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the SavvyCast. If you'll take the time to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes, that would mean so much. As always, thank you for listening, and have a blessed day.